Good morning, Internet. It's Alan at Woodcrest Bonsai. And this is the third installment of me working on my shohin ilex shillings. But before we get started, I want to show you the catkins that have covered my backdrop. I mean, look at it here. Just insane. It has been extremely windy. And these are the flowers of oak trees. You can see some of the leaves there. There's actually a maple seed up at the top. But it's just insane. And I can't get them off because this backdrop is all like fuzzy and it just holds on to them. So I need a new backdrop. Anyway, let's get back to the trees. Okay. I'm going to do these in the same order that I did the last time. And I'm going to try to keep all the trees together in each group. So we need to zoom in on this guy and move the camera a little bit. So my original design for this guy was to bring this branch down to mimic this branch, and I was going to also wire the trunk like that, and then like that. And I don't know, at some point I decided I didn't like that. But as is the case with some of the other trees, this one has barely sprouted. There's a couple little tiny sprouts right here. And if we spin it around, I keep grabbing the pot to spin it around because my turntable is brand new. Yay! It's actually just a lazy Susan. And you see, there's just no new growth. So there's not that much to do on this tree. So I'm still really not quite sure. In the last video, I talked about just removing this and still trying to make a sweep like that. So the jury is still out. The beauty of bonsai is you don't have to do it right now. Wait on it, kind of chew on it if you want, and then make the decision when you feel it's right. And so that's what I'm going to do with this tree. Is just let it kind of just chill, and then make a decision a little bit later. But I want to include it because I want that continuity of each group of 6. I think it's each 3 groups of 6. So that's number 1. Tree number 2 is a little bit smaller. One of the smallest of the group. And we'll give it a little bit of a zoom. So this tree had a much larger leader that was coming up into here, and it was more developed, but I decided to take it to this guy to create more taper. But what that did, it also reduced the fullness up top here. So all this top, if we turn it like this, you see there's nothing. So that all needs to grow. Then we have this kind of funky angle on the second branch, which is fine. That'll add some visual interest. The first branch, although it's hard to tell, if we spin it, you'll see that it's shooting way back. And I really want to bring it forward. In my world, I want my branches, my first 2 main branches, to be at 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock. And neither of them are like that on this tree. And it does have some sprouting. So I'm going to, especially this branch here has a lot of little sprouts, so I'm going to remove a lot of that. And they're so young that it's really just a matter of just rubbing them off with your fingers, although that one leaf doesn't want to come. And then we have some back branch that has some new growth that can be pinched away. Here's a little more here. And then this guy here is shooting straight up, so I want to reduce him. Because if I let that grow, it'll start to compete with the leader. Now, it's possible I could go like that. Take this whole thing off and make that the tree. But don't want to do that. There's this little tiny bit of growth right here which really isn't going to do much as far as the design, but it may help to heal these scars. The vellum will cover the cut more quickly. So I'm going to leave that on for now. I'm going to pinch off just this top, but I really need more space in here. So this little guy right there is very important. That guy right there, because he's going to fill in this space. And I'm going to cut this guy. And probably this one too. And then in the future, definitely want to try to get my first two branches to come a little forward. This tree is another perfect example of how Shillings make fantastic little nabari. And so even though this tree is not quote-unquote perfect, it's still got some nice potential, and I've been enjoying working on it. And I don't regret chopping out what used to be the whole top of the tree, because it'll have that much more taper and be more visually interesting as the years go by. So that's number 2. Tree number 3 needs to zoom out a little. I just learned how to zoom, so I'm just playing. Oh, I know, I'm so technologically challenged. Now this guy here has sprouted considerably. This branch here could in theory be branch number 1, and I could bring it around into here. I remember I went to go see Kimura in 1998. Oh my God, how many years ago? And he worked on 3 huge trees. But he had one tree where one of the main branches came virtually straight out the back, and he wired that thing into place, and he brought it around and put it as the first main branch, and visually you couldn't even tell the difference. So it was pretty interesting. Right now I'm just looking at it as a sacrifice branch, and I'm going to take a little bit of it off, but not much. Sacrifice branch works best if you just let it go crazy. And then once again, sacrifice branches only add thickness to the trunk from where they emerge from the trunk down. So the rest of the tree has very nice form. We have a strong first branch, so I'm going to cut all the stuff that's growing straight up. Some of this little stuff near the trunk can also be removed. Then I have a little bit of an eye-poking branch right here, but I sometimes I leave just a little tuft like that. And then our second branch, if I take this leaf off, you can see it better. Our second branch is growing nicely. Probably could use to come down a little bit. And I want to also shorten that. Now this growth here is kind of shooting straight at us. And I would really like for it to elongate more like that. So maybe in another month or so, when it's hardened off a little better, wire it into place. And I'm still just going to pinch the very tip. And then the rest of the tree has a very nice little apex. Got some growth right here coming from this branch that I'm going to take off right there. So this is a slanting trunk. The apex is up into here. So trim all that small stuff there. We're missing a little bit in here, but it's not that big of a deal. This back branch can fill in visually, that space, even though it's from the back. It also has some growth here that's shooting longer than what I want, so I'm going to take that off. And we're missing some in here, but that'll all sprout out into there. So there we go. That is looking pretty good. The Nabari it's okay, but it's not spectacular. But sometimes you can kind of find that if you start to dig around in there, you'll find that, maybe I should put it in the camera, that there's more roots underneath that you can expose to create better Nabari. But this is a nice little tree. I like the movement. And it's in a pretty nice little pot. So there we go. That's the next one. This next guy has some really nice curves. And most of the time when I'm talking about trimming things off, I say, you can't really make a mistake. You just increase the amount of time before it's a finished tree. But I definitely made the mistake of taking this branch here off. Right there. Because it used to come into here, and you see this is all just completely bare. It was a bar branch with this guy, but now I have this small growth here emerging. So I can, once this grows in, I can take this off, and I'll no longer have the bar branches, but I'll have this space filled in. I have already, off camera, pinched everything back that's above this little guy, because I want the tree, obviously I want the apex to continue to grow, but I want the tree to put energy into this little guy coming out. And so far it hasn't done that, but I'm confident that over time it'll happen. As far as the rest of the tree, it's got some very small emergent growth. I can have a little bit of trimming. But like this branch here is already pretty set. That's a pretty nice branch. And this branch here has also got some pretty nice ramification that could, ramify further, but it's not, it's on its way. And the apex could use to be a little bigger, and especially right here, we need a space. We need a branch right there. And I made a mistake. I took that guy off, and then I almost immediately said, oops, maybe I should have done that. But with the new growth, I'm confident that I can get another branch to take its place. And this tree has some interesting Nabari. It's actually 3 fairly large roots. And they're a little bit high. You see right in here, there's actually space. But nothing that can't be rectified by the next time I repot to lower it just a little tiny bit. But I really love this tree. A lot of people that have viewed these videos say that this is one of their favorites. And I'm confident that once this guy grows in there, it will be so much nicer. And all this curve was done by clip and grow. All the chops to make this go like that. None of that was wired. I did wire this apex, and I left the wire on a little tiny bit too long. Can you see that? I'm going to have to come clean. Try to hold it steady so it stays in focus. There's a couple little wire scars right there and right there. But as the tree grows, you'll never see those. Or let me put it this way. I defy you in 4 or 5 years to point them out to me once the tree is beautiful and full, and the wire scars will be inconsequential. Gotta zoom out on this guy a little bit too. There we go. This is a tree very similar to the one that was in the second batch, that is much taller, much thinner. This tree has a little bit more movement than that other one, but they were both kind of an experiment. I was taking trees and cutting them way back to make little trees, and I had a couple of these taller ones, and I thought, I think I'm just going to keep that line. I liked this line, so I decided to keep it taller. If this is the first branch, then all this crazy stuff here needs to be shortened quite a bit, and that's old, so I don't know why I kept that like that. Oh, come on. All right, I need to spin it around so I can get to it. There we go. Okay. And this is another tree where if this is the first branch and this is the second branch, they're both going away from you instead of forward. I suppose that I'm moving the pot instead of the turntable. I'm so used to moving the pot. I suppose I can make this the front. And so then my branches would be coming towards me. But I don't know. I don't like that as the front. I like this as the front. And who knows, maybe we change where the branches are. Maybe this becomes branch number 2 that is coming out. I don't want to call these bunjin, because bunjin, if I was going to turn this into a bunjin, then all of this would come off. All these guys would come off, and we just have the foliage way up here. But they certainly are distinctly different. This one and the guy that was in the last video. But I kind of like these. I love some of the little guys. But these long, taller ones are intriguing. I'm very intrigued to see just what they're going to do. And now here we have a perfect example of another potential leader. That guy there, we could take this off completely like that and bring this guy up as the leader, which would create more taper and it would create a little bit more movement. So this is all totally straight all the way up into here, which as far as the design is not that bad. But if we took it to here and brought this guy up as the new leader, you see it just changes everything. A little bit more taper, a little bit more movement, a little bit more visual interest. So that's a very real possibility for me. Oh, I got some kind of bug. Oh, a renter. So there we go. This guy's got a little bit of flowers too. I have one of the other batch that is just blooming like absolutely nuts. But I like these tall trees. I think they're kind of cool. They're fun to play with. The Nabari is, it's okay. But I'm not looking for a giant, massive trunk and then a tall, thin tree. That would just not be a natural look. And a lot of times, bonsai are rather contrived. They're an approximation of a tree in nature. So, but I'm not worried at all about a fat buttress trunk on this guy because it just doesn't lend itself to the design. It's not necessary. So there's the next one. And last but not least is this guy here. And this is the last of the 18 also. This tree, like another one also in the second batch, is in a plastic training pot that looks like a bonsai pot. They're actually quite nice, but it's actually just a training pot. This tree is in 100% organic soil. You can just see the oak leaves, just crazy. It's just crazy. And this is a much more upright tree. little more formal. So like this growth here, I'm going to take, come on, my scissors just suddenly go dull. That's twice that's happened. And it's beginning to sprout. I don't think we need that guy there, or that little tiny bit there. And then we have our second branch here, and then another branch almost right underneath it. So I'm going to shorten that guy a lot. And then our back branch is also very long, so I'm going to give him a pretty good cut back. Do some up here. Once again, the apex all needs to fill in. In order for a tree to look really old and mature, you need to have a really nice thick canopy. So this branch here should be elongated out here. You notice how this branch is actually further out than this one. So let this guy elongate into here so you have a nicer canopy. We're missing some stuff in here that can all, like sometimes these little tiny guys that are now just barely coming out of the trunk, they can fill in those spaces. Unless, of course, you chop them off by accident like on the other guy. So there we go. This is a much more formal tree, much more upright. I wouldn't call it a formal upright, because that's a completely different style where the trunk is exactly straight. And I only have one of those, and that is the bald cypress I've been working on. I'm getting ready to feature that bald cypress, but I want it to grow a little tiny bit more. But as far as the shillings, that's it for the shillings. This is the last of the 18. And as I've said in the other videos, this little pinching, all this maintenance stuff, will now continue for the entire life of the tree. This is the very first spring sprouts, so I've cut some of them off. Some of them will elongate more, but in another month, it could very easily be that it's time to do it again. And then May, June, July, all the way until they begin to go dormant in the fall. And the more you do this, the more you take off all the smaller stuff before it's really elongated, the denser your pads will be, the denser your foliage will be, and the more your tree will look like a tree. So that's very important stuff for me, is to get to that. Part of the reason I started this channel, because I have a whole bunch of trees that I have not done that. I still have a bunch to show you where they've just, especially like Portucaria jade, they're just totally overgrown, and they need to be cut back so much. And that's all coming. So I feel a lot more conscientious having this channel, that now I need to keep up so that the people watching can, I don't even know how to say it, but I think you know what I mean. The more views things get, the more I feel compelled to keep up on my stuff. It's really given me a lot of enthusiasm to keep up on my trees better, because I just have way too many. Well, no, ooh, did I just say that? Never! You could never have too many. But I do have a lot of trees, and I could literally be out here all day long every day and still never catch up. It reminds me the very first date I ever went on with my wife, who has not been my wife for many years, but we won't go there. We went to an orchid guy, and he had orchids that were hanging from poles where the roots were 4 feet long. And he told us, yeah, I'm about 7 years behind. And I believed him. He didn't care. Anyway, I'm not that far behind. So if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Subscribers can continue to watch these Guys, grow and develop. If you've hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. I love shillings. Once again, I know I've said it multiple times in this series of 3 videos. This is another one that's got pretty good, nice nabari. They make fantastic nabari. They form really nice, thick trunks even at a young age. They break off of old wood, and because they don't have any apical dominance, you can pick and choose your branches super easy. Very small adult leaf size. That's as big as they ever get. So just they have so many positive aspects of what we want in a bonsai. And of course you need to be able to keep them alive. So in the ground, in the landscape, the data says they grow all the way into zone 7. In a pot, the roots can freeze solid, and then that tree is dead. And that's happened to me in the 80s. In the 80s we had 4 catastrophic freezes that went down into the 20s. And I didn't even realize it, and I lost a bunch of trees because the roots froze solid. You know, the top of the tree, okay, no problem. And if the roots are in the ground, then the roots aren't going to freeze solid unless it's permafrost in the Arctic. But man, it was a shock. But if you can keep them over the winter with some cold protection, Shillings makes fantastic bonsai. And the people in Florida here, you know, like I'm in zone 10, all throughout the whole state, Shillings is a very, very popular bonsai. So thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment if you'd like. And thanks for watching Woodcrest Bonsai.